The grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton sparkled with the glitter of diamonds and the flash of paparazzi cameras as New York's elite filed in for the annual Voices for Hope charity concert. Alex Thornton, 35-year-old Wall Street wunderkind and notorious bachelor, adjusted his bow tie as he strode confidently through the crowd. "Mr. Thornton, over here," called out Allison Reed, the event organizer. Her auburn hair was piled elegantly atop her head, and her emerald green gown hugged her curves in a way that made Alex's breath catch. "We're so glad you could make it. Your generous donation has made tonight possible." Alex flashed his $1 million smile, the one that had graced countless magazine covers. "Please call me Alex, and it's my pleasure. My mother always taught me the importance of giving back." As Allison led him to his front row seat, Alex pulled out his phone and dialed a familiar number. "Mom, it's me. I'm at the concert." Victoria Thornton's warm voice filled his ear. "Oh, darling, I wish I could be there. This flu has really knocked me for a loop." "I know, Mom. Don't worry, I'm recording everything for you to watch later. How are you feeling?" There was a pause, filled with a muffled cough. "Oh, you know me. I'll be right as rain in no time. Now, tell me about the children. Any standout performers?" Alex chuckled. His mother's passion for nurturing young talent was legendary in New York's philanthropic circles. "The show hasn't started yet, Mom, but I promise to keep an eye out for any future Broadway stars." As he hung up, Alex's mind drifted back to the day, 20 years ago, that had changed both their lives forever. 14-year-old Emily Thornton stormed out of the family's Upper East Side brownstone, her long blonde hair whipping behind her in the autumn wind. "I hate you!" she screamed over her shoulder. "I'm never coming back!" Victoria watched helplessly from the doorway, her heart breaking. "Emily, please! Let's talk about this!" But Emily was already gone, swallowed up by the bustling New York streets. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Victoria's desperate search consumed her life. She plastered the city with missing posters, hired private investigators, and appeared on every talk show that would have her. It was on one of these searches, a year after Emily's disappearance, that Victoria encountered a scruffy teenager huddled in an alley. His clothes were ragged, his face smudged with dirt, but his eyes, those piercing blue eyes, held a spark of intelligence and determination that Victoria recognized immediately. "Are you hungry?" she asked gently. The boy Alex nodded warily. That meal at a nearby diner turned into a conversation, which turned into a lifeline for both of them. Within months, Victoria had legally adopted Alex, pouring all the love she couldn't give her missing daughter into this boy who had nobody else in the world. Now, 20 years later, Alex sat in the opulent concert hall, a self-made millionaire with the world at his feet. But the hole left by Emily's disappearance still ached, a phantom limb that neither he nor Victoria could ever truly forget. The lights dimmed, pulling Alex back to the present. As the first young performer took the stage, he settled in, determined to find that special talent his mother so desperately wanted to nurture. The concert was in full swing, a parade of precocious children belting out Broadway standards and pop hits. Alex dutifully recorded each performance, but he couldn't deny a creeping sense of disappointment. None of these kids, talented as they were, had that spark his mother always talked about. Allison slipped into the seat next to him during a brief intermission. "So, what do you think?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "They're all very good," Alex replied diplomatically. "My mother will be thrilled to see the recordings." Allison leaned in conspiratorially, her perfume tickling Alex's senses. "Just wait. I've saved the best for last. There's a girl, Carly. She has the most extraordinary voice I've ever heard. But there's a catch." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" "She has amnesia, was found wandering in Central Park 2 years ago. No ID, no memory of who she was or where she came from. The doctors say it was likely caused by severe trauma. But when she sings..." Allison shook her head in wonder. "It's like she becomes someone else entirely." Before Alex could respond, the lights dimmed again. A petite blonde girl, no more than 16, took center stage. Her simple white dress was a stark contrast to the glitzy costumes of the previous performers, and then she began to sing. From the first note, Alex was transfixed. Carly's voice soared through the concert hall, pure and haunting. It was as if every emotion he'd ever felt was being channeled through her song. Unbidden, tears sprang to his eyes. As the last note faded away, the audience erupted in thunderous applause. Alex fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking slightly as he sent the video to his mother. "You're right," he whispered to Allison. "She's incredible." But there was something else, something Alex couldn't quite put his finger on, a nagging sense of familiarity that tugged at the edges of his mind. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Bring her to me, now." Alex's Aston Martin tore through the late-night streets of Manhattan, his mind racing even faster than the car. What had his mother seen in that video that had her so agitated? As he pulled into the circular driveway of the Thornton mansion, he saw the lights blazing in every window. Clearly, Victoria hadn't waited up for him calmly. He burst through the front door to find Victoria pacing in the foyer, still in her silk robe despite the late hour. Her face was pale, her eyes wild with a mix of hope and fear. "Mom, what's going on? Are you okay?" Victoria grabbed his arms, her grip surprisingly strong for a woman in her 60s. "That girl, Alex, the one who was singing. I need to see her. Tonight." Alex gently guided his mother to the plush sofa in the living room. "Mom, it's nearly midnight. The orphanage is closed. We can go first thing in the morning, I promise. But right now, you need to rest. You're still recovering from the flu." Victoria shook her head vehemently. "You don't understand. I think she might be Emily's daughter." Alex felt like he'd been punched in the gut. "What? Mom, that's impossible. Emily was only 14 when she ran away. This girl is at least 16. "I know how it sounds," Victoria said, her voice trembling. "But look." She grabbed a remote, and suddenly the enormous flat-screen TV came to life. It was an old home video, the kind shot on camcorders in the late 90s. A young girl with long blonde hair and striking green eyes was singing into a hairbrush, her voice pure and sweet. "That's Emily," Alex whispered, transfixed by the image of the sister he'd never known. Victoria nodded. "Now watch this." She pulled up the video Alex had sent her from the concert. As Carly's face filled the screen, the resemblance was undeniable. The same delicate features, the same captivating green eyes. "Oh my God," Alex breathed. "But how?" Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know, but I have to find out. Please, Alex, bring her to me. I need to know if she's my granddaughter." As Alex looked at his mother's pleading face, he knew there would be no rest for either of them until they unraveled this mystery. "Okay," he said, already pulling out his phone. "I'll make some calls. We'll get to the bottom of this, Mom. I promise." The next morning found Alex and Victoria in the austere office of Dr. Eleanor Simmons, director of the Harmony House Orphanage. The good doctor peered at them over her wire-rimmed glasses, her expression a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Mr. and Mrs. Thornton, while I appreciate your interest in Carly, I must remind you that our children's privacy is of utmost importance to us." Alex leaned forward, his most charming smile in place. "We completely understand, Dr. Simmons, but we believe there might be a family connection here. Surely you can appreciate how important that could be for Carly?" Dr. Simmons sighed, relenting slightly. "Very well. What would you like to know?" Victoria spoke up, her voice quavering with emotion. "How did Carly come to be in your care?" The doctor's face softened. "It's quite a tragic story, I'm afraid. Carly was found wandering in Central Park 2 years ago. She was dehydrated, malnourished, and completely disoriented. When the police brought her in, she couldn't tell us her name or where she came from. The trauma of whatever she'd been through had caused severe amnesia." Alex felt his mother's hand tighten on his arm. "And her mother?" Victoria asked. "Was there any sign of her?" Dr. Simmons shook her head sadly. "We ran her DNA through every database we could. No matches. But given Carly's condition when she was found and some other evidence, we believe her mother likely died trying to protect her from some sort of danger." Victoria let out a small gasp. Alex wrapped an arm around her shoulders, steadying her. "What kind of danger?" he asked. The doctor hesitated. "I really shouldn't say more without concrete proof of your connection to Carly, but if you're truly her family..." Well, let's just say there are some very bad people out there who might still be looking for her. Alex's mind raced. Could Emily have gotten mixed up with criminals? Is that why she never came home? Dr. Simmons, he said, his voice low and urgent. We'd like to request a DNA test to confirm if Carly is indeed related to us. The doctor nodded slowly. I suppose that would be the most prudent course of action, but I must warn you, if the test comes back negative, this ends here. Carly has been through enough trauma without getting her hopes up needlessly. As they left the office, Alex could feel the weight of 2 decades of unanswered questions pressing down on them. Whatever the truth was, he knew their lives were about to change forever. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of anticipation and tentative bonding. While they waited for the DNA results, Victoria threw herself into getting to know Carly. The girl spent every afternoon at the Thornton mansion, her initial shyness gradually giving way to a quiet warmth. Alex watched in amazement as his mother came alive in a way he hadn't seen in years. The two would spend hours at the grand piano in the music room, Victoria patiently teaching Carly classical pieces while the girl's angelic voice filled the house with song. One evening, as Alex returned home from a long day at the office, he paused in the doorway of the music room. Victoria and Carly sat side by side at the piano, their blonde heads bent close together as they pored over a piece of sheet music. The scene was so domestic, so right, that Alex felt his throat tighten with emotion. Well, well, he said, announcing his presence. Looks like I'm interrupting a master class. Carly looked up, a shy smile lighting up her face. Hi, Alex. Victoria was just teaching me Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. It's so beautiful. Indeed it is, Alex replied, his eyes meeting his mother's over Carly's head. The hope and love he saw there nearly took his breath away. Just then, Alex's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, his heart racing when he saw the caller ID. It's the lab, he said, his voice suddenly hoarse. The test results are in. Victoria stood, her hand reaching out to steady herself on the piano. Well? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. What does it say? Alex scanned the email, his eyes widening. He looked up, a smile spreading across his face. It's a match. Carly is your granddaughter. The room erupted in a cacophony of sobs, laughter, and disbelieving exclamations. Victoria pulled Carly into a fierce hug, tears streaming down both their faces. Alex watched, his own eyes misting over, as years of pain and longing seemed to melt away in the warmth of their embrace. But amidst the joy, a small voice piped up. I remember, Carly said, her voice trembling. I remember my mom. She was trying to protect me. There were bad men chasing us. She told me to run, to hide, and then... Carly's voice broke as the floodgates of memory opened. Victoria held her close, murmuring soothing words as the girl sobbed out years of repressed trauma. As Alex watched his newfound niece cry in his mother's arms, he felt a fierce protectiveness wash over him. Whatever had happened to Emily, whatever danger still lurked in Carly's past, he vowed then and there to keep his family safe, no matter the cost. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of emotion and adjustment. Carly moved into the Thornton mansion, her few belongings from the orphanage looking woefully out of place in the opulent guest room that was now hers. With the return of her memories came nightmares and panic attacks. Victoria insisted on the best therapists money could buy, determined to help her granddaughter heal from the traumas of her past. Alex threw himself into investigating what had happened to Emily. He hired private detectives, called in favors from his contacts in law enforcement, and spent countless late nights poring over old police reports and newspaper articles. Slowly but surely, a picture began to emerge. Emily, young and naive, had fallen in with a dangerous crowd after running away. She'd gotten mixed up with a notorious crime family, becoming a reluctant accomplice in their schemes. But when she'd gotten pregnant with Carly, she'd tried to break free. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together, but the full picture remained frustratingly out of reach. What had finally happened to Emily? And were the people who had been after her and Carly still out there? Despite the lingering questions and the challenges of recovery, life in the Thornton household settled into a new rhythm. Music became a healing balm for all of them. Victoria and Carly spent hours at the piano, their duets filling the house with a joy that had been absent for far too long. Even Alex, who had never shown much interest in music beyond appreciating it, found himself drawn to the melodies that seemed to weave their family closer together with each passing day. One sunny afternoon, as Alex sat in his home office reviewing some financial reports, a knock at the door drew his attention. Carly stood in the doorway, looking nervous but determined. "Hey, kiddo," Alex said, smiling warmly. "What's up?" Carly took a deep breath. I want to visit my mom's grave, if that's okay." Alex felt his heart clench. In all the excitement and worry of the past few weeks, they hadn't yet broached the subject of Emily's final resting place. A small plot in the family mausoleum had been reserved for her, though her body had never been found. "Of course it's okay," Alex said gently. "Would you like me and Victoria to come with you?" Carly nodded, relief evident on her face. "Yes, please. I think it's time to say goodbye properly." The Thornton family mausoleum stood silent and imposing in the dappled shade of ancient oak trees. Alex, Victoria, and Carly walked hand in hand up the stone path, each lost in their own thoughts. As they entered the cool marble interior, their footsteps echoed softly. They came to a stop before a simple plaque that read, "Emily Rose Thornton, beloved daughter and mother, though lost to sight, to memory dear." Carly reached out, her fingers tracing the engraved letters. "Hi, Mom," she said softly. "I'm sorry it took me so long to come see you. I forgot for a while. But I remember now. I remember how brave you were, how much you loved me." Victoria and Alex stood back, giving Carly space for this intimate moment. Tears streamed silently down Victoria's face as she listened to her granddaughter speak to the daughter she had lost. "I want you to know that I'm safe now," Carly continued, her voice growing stronger. "Grandma Victoria and Uncle Alex found me. They're taking care of me just like you wanted. And I'm going to be okay, Mom, I promise. I'm going to live the life you wanted for me." As Carly spoke, Alex felt a shift in the air, as if a weight that had been pressing down on all of them for years was finally lifting. He watched as Victoria stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Carly's shoulder. "Emily, my darling," Victoria said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry for all the years we lost. But I promise you, we'll take care of your little girl. She'll want for nothing, and she'll always know how much you loved her." Alex added his own silent promise, vowing to protect and guide his niece as if she were his own daughter. As the three of them stood there, united in grief and love, Alex felt a sense of peace settle over him. They were a family, bound not just by blood, but by the shared experience of loss and the joy of rediscovery. After a long moment, Carly turned to them, her eyes red, but her face serene. I think I'm ready to go home now." As they walked out of the mausoleum, the warm sunlight seemed to embrace them. Alex noticed that Carly walked with a new confidence, her shoulders straight and her head held high. It was as if, in saying goodbye to her mother, she had found the strength to fully embrace her new life. Victoria linked her arm through Carly's, smiling warmly. "What do you say we stop for ice cream on the way home? I seem to remember that was a Thornton family tradition after visiting the cemetery." Carly's face lit up. "Really? That sounds wonderful." As they climbed into Alex's car, the heaviness of the cemetery visit began to lift. By the time they pulled up to their favorite ice cream parlor, Carly was chatting animatedly about a new song she wanted to learn on the piano. Watching his mother and niece laugh together over enormous sundaes, Alex felt a warmth spread through his chest. This, he realized, was what family was all about. Not the perfectly polished image they had tried to maintain for so many years, but the messy, complicated, beautiful reality of people who loved each other through good times and bad. In the months that followed, life at the Thornton mansion took on a new rhythm. Carly threw herself into her studies, determined to make up for lost time. Victoria, energized by her granddaughter's presence, began to take a more active role in the family's philanthropic endeavors, focusing particularly on organizations that helped runaway and at-risk youth. Alex found himself re-evaluating his own life choices. The drive that had propelled him to the top of the financial world now seemed hollow compared to the joy he found in family dinners and weekend outings with Carly and Victoria. One evening, as Alex sat in his home office reviewing some investment proposals, a knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. He looked up to see Allison Reed, the charity concert organizer, standing in the doorway. "Allison," he said, surprised but pleased. "What brings you here?" She smiled, a hint of nervousness in her eyes. "I hope I'm not interrupting. Your mother invited me over to discuss some ideas for next year's concert, but I was hoping I might catch you alone for a moment." Alex felt his heart rate pick up. He'd been meaning to ask Allison out for weeks, but had never found the right moment. "Not interrupting at all," he said, gesturing for her to come in. "What's on your mind?" Allison took a deep breath. "Well, I was wondering if you might like to grab dinner sometime, just the two of us." A slow smile spread across Alex's face. "I'd like that very much," he said softly. As they stood there, grinning at each other like teenagers, a burst of music floated up from the floor below. The sweet notes of Carly's voice, accompanied by Victoria on the piano, filled the air. "She really is remarkable," Allison said, her eyes shining. "You must be so proud." Alex nodded, a lump forming in his throat. "I am, of both of them. They've taught me so much about what really matters in life." Allison reached out, squeezing his hand gently. "It shows. You've changed, Alex. In a good way." As they made plans for their date, Alex felt a sense of excitement he hadn't experienced in years. This wasn't just about a potential romantic connection. It was about opening himself up to new possibilities, to a life filled with more than just work and wealth. Later that night, as the household settled down for the evening, Alex found himself drawn to the music room. Carly sat at the piano, her fingers dancing over the keys as she worked out a new melody. "That's beautiful," Alex said, leaning against the doorframe. "Is it your own composition?" Carly looked up, a shy smile on her face. "I'm trying. Grandma Victoria says I have a gift for it." Alex crossed the room, settling onto the piano bench beside her. "She's right. You have an incredible talent, Carly. And not just for music. You're one of the strongest, bravest people I've ever met." Carly's eyes welled up with tears. "Thank you, Uncle Alex, for everything. I don't know where I'd be without you and Grandma." Alex wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "We're the lucky ones, kiddo. You've brought so much light back into our lives." As they sat there, the soft notes of Carly's unfinished song hanging in the air, Alex marveled at how much his life had changed in just a few short months. The empty mansion had become a home again, filled with music and laughter. The drive for success that had consumed him for so long had been replaced by a deeper sense of purpose. And as he looked at Carly, this remarkable young woman who had overcome so much, Alex knew that the best was yet to come. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as a family. 1 year later. The grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton was once again alive with the sounds of music and laughter, but this year's Voices for Hope charity concert felt different. There was a warmth, a sense of genuine connection that permeated the air. Alex stood at the back of the room, his arm wrapped around Allison's waist. Their relationship had blossomed over the past year, bringing a new dimension of joy to his life. As he watched Victoria work the crowd, charming donors and comforting nervous young performers with equal ease, he felt a surge of pride. And then Carly took the stage. The audience fell silent as the first notes of her original composition filled the air. It was a song of loss and redemption, of family found and hope restored. As Carly's voice soared, Alex saw tears in the eyes of hardened businessmen and jaded socialites alike. When the last note faded away, there was a moment of breathless silence before the room erupted in thunderous applause. Carly beamed, her eyes finding Alex and Victoria in the crowd. The love and pride shining on their faces was all the validation she needed. As the evening wound down, Alex found himself on the terrace, taking a moment of quiet reflection. So much had changed in the past year. The Thornton Family Foundation, under Victoria's guidance, had expanded its focus to include programs for runaway and at-risk youth. Alex had stepped back from the day-to-day operations of his company, choosing instead to mentor young entrepreneurs from underprivileged backgrounds. And Carly was flourishing. Her talent had caught the attention of several record labels, but she had chosen to focus on her education for now, determined to make the most of the opportunities her mother had fought so hard to give her. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Allison's voice broke through his reverie. Alex turned, pulling her close. "Just thinking about how lucky I am, how we all are." Allison smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "It's amazing how life can change when you open your heart to new possibilities." As they stood there, the New York City skyline glittering before them, Alex felt a sense of contentment he'd never known before. The road ahead might not always be smooth, but with his family by his side, he was ready for whatever came next. Inside, the sound of laughter drifted out onto the terrace. Alex recognized the voices of Victoria and Carly, no doubt regaling some guests with one of their now famous duets. "Shall we?" he asked Allison, offering his arm. She nodded, her eyes sparkling. "Let's go make some music of our own." As they rejoined the party, Alex knew that the true harmony in his life had nothing to do with the notes being played on stage. It was in the bonds of family, the warmth of love, and the joy of second chances. The lost melody had been found, and the Thornton family's song was more beautiful than ever before.